Welcome to video number 7. Here we're going to go over the MIDI pattern builder, and I think everybody out there is going to benefit from this, but I think the beginners are probably going to benefit the most. So what I did was just clicked over to the pattern builder sub panel, and in here you'll see a bunch of folders. The first one being full compositions. We're going to focus on this first, and I'm just going to choose the very first one, 120 jacked. That means the BPM is at 120. However, these are MIDI files, so it could be whatever. It just might start sounding funny if you go way out of this BPM. And you'll see that we have a bunch of layers, and they are actually titled by what bank they should be set to once you have them laid onto this main module. So the way this actually works best is when you use one instance of this as your source to drag and drop from, and then use further layers to apply all this stuff to. So what I'm going to do right now is just duplicate this layer of Kontakt. I'm going to open it up. I'm going to go away from my pattern builder back to my main module, and now I'm back to all my banks. And unfortunately they're not labeled alphabetically and you cannot sort them, but there's only 3 banks, and very quickly you'll get used to what's where. So these don't necessarily have to stick to what they're named to. That's just how we built them and what they'll sound best on as far as the default sound goes. Now, these have also been exported as WAV files and assigned into our looper module. So all of these will be found in the looper module, and you guys basically have access to every single layer for all of those tracks. What I'll first do is start with drums. If you see a D dash, that always means that that's going to be a drum layer. And if you notice D90s, that's going to correlate to D90s. So I already know to set it to that right there if I want to hear how this track was originally built. I'm going to double click onto the actual file, then from up here drag and drop onto that second layer, which is this guy. When this pops up, always click no. Even when I import tempo, it doesn't really import the tempo that I was building this with, so just always say no. So let's hear what we got now. Okay, it's hi-hats, and you'll hear that there is already some pitch bending going on. So you'll see that a lot of these MIDI files, the hi-hats anyway, have some treatments going on with them as far as automation goes right off the hop. So now I'm going to do this again. I'm going to duplicate this layer, and I'm still on 90s, and the second 90s is called 90s drums, which is the rest of the drums on top of the hi-hat. So I'll do the same thing, double click on it, and then from here drag and drop, and then say no when it asks me if I want to change tempos. Okay, sometimes you'll have a tail, you'll just want to bring that back. So now if we loop this, we have the originally made drums and hi-hats together. And now what's cool is, especially for you beginners, double click and you have full understanding of how this beat or this drum pattern was laid. Maneuver it around, move sounds around, try them on different octaves, different sound kits, and very quickly start understanding how MIDI and drum shots or sampled triggers work. Okay, so we're going to keep going here. I'm going to close this, duplicate this again, and I'm going to start assigning the rest of the sounds. We'll move into piano next, so we'll go to piano mid, and we already know to set this to piano. Double click on this guy, and then drag and drop onto that layer. Okay, and then here's probably where you can start adding little effects and reverbs and delays if you want to get it to sound a little bit more full. Okay, now piano 2 can be laid on the same layer, or you can change it and then make piano 2 something else. So these don't have to stay the instruments that they're labeled as. But for this, I'll just keep it the same. It's probably just going to be similar to this, but a variation. And I'm going to copy these guys over, and I'll drag this out to loop over both. Okay, let's keep it going. We're going to add the basses next. Duplicate our layer. Okay, so double click on 808.3, drag, drop, say no, and now set this to 808.3. Right? Let's go. I'm going to take the next one, put it beside it, say no, and the next one, and put it beside the second one. Okay, now I can start getting creative with which layers I want to have here. Maybe here I just want the drums. I don't want the hi-hats and everything else. Maybe I don't want the piano there either. The next sound is a bottle. We're going to double click, drag, drop, say no, and set this to bottle. Bottle, bottle, bottle. So now we're on a little bit of a hunt. There's bottle. Let's see how this sounds. Okay, we're just going to keep it going. Just going to flesh out this song. The next sound is violio. Double click, drag and drop, say no, and now we're going to set this to violio. See how this sounds. Okay, and we have one left. It says voxes, so we're going to double click, lay it, and then change this instance to voxes. Voxes. Okay, we have a video up where I build 5 beats really quick, and this is the first beat that is built in that video. So from here, we can start sequencing everything. So we have the first 2 layers or 2 bars, maybe just the hi-hats and the bass. And for the instruments, just the bottle and the violin. And maybe that can repeat twice. And then your main drop can come in with the piano, etc., etc., etc. So from here, you can start sequencing the song into a full track. And having seen me walk through this, I just built a full composition, one of many. You can see how you can just take one of these layers and maybe add it to one of your existing tracks that's missing something. Like you just can't get that hi-hat right and you want it to roll. Well, we got a couple of those. You just can't get that leader right, that bass line right, those chords right. Or you got a blank canvas and you don't really know where to start. You keep messing around with your VSTs and your sounds and you just don't know what to start with. So grab one of these, throw it in, start building on top of it. Maybe then erase that layer and keep going with your own stuff just to get that initial inspiration and influence from. Now, something else you can do, which is really cool as well, is let's go to the bass layer. Even though we've laid this with the main module, now that it is laid, we have a full bass module as well. So let's drag this over and replace it. So now that we've replaced it, we have 120 basses to choose from instead of having to stick to those initial ones in the main module. So what I'll do is solo the bass and just go through a couple of these until I find one that I think is great. Alright, I like this one a lot, and if you guys haven't watched the bass module video, you can get some more grit out of these and different cool tones by adding some distortion or a cabinet or both. So let's do that. Okay, I like that. Let's see what we got. So at this point, we're basically replacing modules to get variations of sound, and you can do the same when you're building your beats from scratch with this tool. So next, let's go to the violin channel and do the same thing. Instead of having the main module on here, let's replace the violio with the conductor tool. Okay, so let's solo this now and find a cool sound to go with this. Alright, let's revert all this, but you guys get it. You can replace the modules with other modules to get even more sounds and even more creative at any point during your build process. Okay, so what I'll do now is simply keep a loop going with the drums and start showing you guys the rest of the sounds outside of the compositions. We first move into drum patterns, and you also see here from compositions. So instead of going here, going one at a time and just grabbing the drums out anytime you want drums, we've organized them here for you as well. So these are all drums, and these are labeled by BPM, then by the kit they're supposed to be on, and then kind of what it is. We have a freestyle section, which means they're different from the compositions. They were made during the process of building out the tool, and anytime we did something great, a pattern that was cool, we saved it. And we ended up with a lot of freestyled drums, chords, bass lines, leaders, and gap fills and builders aren't from the full compositions. These are specifically made on top of them. And here you guys have drum rolls, snare rolls, risers and falls, and some effects. Alright, so what I'll do right now is actually duplicate one more layer and start assigning some of these guys. Let's start with chords. I'm going to go to chords, freestyled. I will mute everything here except for the drums. And now I'm going to have to choose sounds that are going to go with these. So the first one we'll try is bells chord light. So this will be a chord that fits on the bells section. We're going to go back to 1 and find our bells. Here we go. And let's change it up. Go down an octave with all these. And like I said, even though they were made on bells and it says bells, it doesn't mean we gotta stay there. Let's go to piano. Okay, let's try something else. Let's go to electric guitar. And now let's change this to something else as well. And some of these actually have a glide suffix to them. And what that means is, let me double click on this and then drag them over, lay it, say no, and set it to blipper. So we're going to go into bank 2 and blipper is right here. So if we just play it as is, I'm going to take the second bar and move everything down 1 octave. So we're going to have this split into 2. If we add a glide, it'll add more character to it. and some of you will probably love it, and some might be like, nah, it sounds better without the glide. But if it's labeled glide, you'll go into the glide section and you'll turn portamento on. Then you can play with the time, which will tell the keys to stretch from this note to this note over this period of time. Currently it's at the 40, I believe it's milliseconds, but let's check it out now. Okay, so you can start doing some cool things to it. But yeah, that'll give it some character. If it says glide in the file, it means you can glide it. Even if it doesn't say glide, you might want to experiment. Okay, another instance of how to add some flavor with the MIDI pattern builder is the gap fills, rolls, builders, risers, and falls. So I will delete this again. Okay, so let's add a riser and a fall. We'll go to number 2, double click, drag, drop, say no, and go to risers and falls. So now we will hear it drop and we will hear it build up. Let's do it with just the hi-hats and then we'll drop the beat in. Now let's do that again. I'm going to actually duplicate it and leave that there. I like that. This time we'll do some snare rolls. Let's go to number 2. Double click, drag, drop, say no, and then we'll set this to D trap. So we're going to open up our Kontakt kit and set it to D trap. Okay, and now we should have a nice snare roll happening, but we're going to have to move it over to the end of this bar or the end of this bar or both. I'm going to do both here just so we can hear it twice. First time without the drums, just the hi-hat. Second time with the drums and the bass. Even though that sounds kind of cool, I wasn't trying to do that. Turn off the delay, the reverb, make sure everything's back to normal. Let's go again. Alright, I'm pretty sure I can stop there. You guys get it. There's no sense in me continuing to drag and drop files. There are, I believe, a few hundred at least. I'm not sure what the total is, but a lot of stuff for you guys to play with in here for your existing tracks or exclusively using it all within the Vivid stuff you guys do. Okay, great. Thank you for watching this video. There's one more to go, which we go over the My Instrument module, which allows you to import your own samples and even submit them to us. And if we love them, we're going to sell them on our site and split profits with you. Also want to take a moment to say a lot of work went into these. So if you guys are in any Facebook or social media groups for music production, composing, beats, this and that, please drop a like, grab a link, and share it in those groups. We really want to get this out there with a grassroots movement more so than trying to rely on typical advertising channels. And drop a like and a comment or even some hate if you want to be critical. We'd appreciate that too. Thank you and see you on the next video.